I just want to say it is an honor just to be here on staff at the Father's House. If you would have asked me a year ago, hey, do you think you'll be working at the Father's House in a year? I would have laughed at you probably and been like, no. But I've known Pastor Pierre for about 8 years, he and Marlise. And so through those years, we've kind of been connected. My wife and I have been huge fans of the Father's House from a distance. We've always thought about, what would it be like to work for someone like Pierre? And obviously it would be awesome. And then about 9 months ago, he texted me and said, hey, would you be interested in potentially being a student pastor here? And I was like, well, yeah. So talked to Pastor Chris, got to know him a lot. We're like best friends now. And Esther and I just feel very indebted to this place. We call this place home. We just love to be here at the Father's House. So thanks for having us. So yeah. So who would agree with me that the foundation that you're building something on is fairly important, right? I mean, this isn't rocket science. Like, if you're going to build something, you want the foundation to be really good. If you're going to build a business, you want the foundation of that business to be really good. I think we could agree foundations are really important. So on that note, now I am not a gym rat by any stretch of the imagination. If you can tell, I'm awfully scrawny, and I've kind of embraced that in my life. The gym and I have a mutual understanding. We do not belong together. So maybe there's a couple gym rats in here. There's always one or two in every crowd. Even talking about it, your muscles start to twitch, like, oh my gosh, I have to go work out. Like, I get it. I get you. We will not be getting along in the gym together. But when I first moved out to Rochester a few years ago, Esther, I went to church with her. She was my girlfriend at the time. And she's like, hey, you should meet with my pastor. He's a great guy. And I'm thinking, I'm a pastor's kid. That sounds awesome. And so I go up to, this guy's name was Pastor Josh. He's like the most jacked guy that I know. And I was like, hey, Pastor Josh, I'd love to meet with you sometime this week. Do you have any free time? And he said, yeah, I work out every morning at 6 a.m. You should come. And now I never work out. So I was like, okay, and not thinking about what I just signed up for. And so 5:45 in the morning rolls around, and my alarm goes off. I roll out of bed. I hardly have any gym clothes, okay? So I've got basketball shorts, an old T-shirt, and like those white casual just shoes that you wear to dinner, So this is my way to go to the gym. So the gym was free, so that lets you know the quality of the gym I was going to. All the floors were rubber, so the room just kind of had that rubber smell, not good for you. And I walk in, and it's Pastor Josh, the guy I want to spend time with and talk about life with, and like 3 or 4 of his friends that are much larger than I am. So I'm thinking, like, this is interesting. And so they say, we're going to be doing P90X. Now, that meant nothing to me at the time. Okay, now, mind you, like I said, this has been it. This is as big as I've gotten my entire life. So I don't work out. So I did not know that drinking water is a good thing. At that time, I probably hadn't had a sip of water in a month, okay? Unless it's in my coffee, and then I get the water intake. I don't stretch at all, like I just don't. And so this is how I'm going into the gym. So we start P90X, which is like terrible, and within 2 minutes, I feel like I'm going to die. I just feel like this is it. And so I run to the bathroom, and I'm sitting on the bathroom floor, really questioning a lot about myself in those moments. Like, why am I here? Like, didn't he look at me? This was very cruel. And then, so after about 10 minutes of being in the bathroom, I decided, well, I'm just going to go back, and I'm going to try this again. And so if you've never done P90X, what they do is a lot of terrible things. Like, you do a lot of, like, calisthenic stuff, like running in place. You do push-ups. You lift weights, all in the same workout. Makes no sense. And so I get back in, and they're doing these things, and so I last about 2 more minutes, and then literally I just go pale white. Like, I just go pale white, and like I said, it's like toxic fumes in the place, but there's a fan. And so I'm like, oh, good, a fan. So I go over and I lay down. This has actually happened. I go and lay down next to the fan, and there's like 5 burly guys around me. And here I am in the corner. I've never been to the gym before, laying in the corner, pale white. Now I'm questioning everything. Like, why in the world did I even move out here? Like, what is happening? And it was bad. They're like, do you need to go home? I was like, yeah, I think I do, and I'm never coming back here again. Thank you. And so I left. It was the most embarrassing moment of my life, probably. But foundations are pretty important. Like, if I would have maybe taken a glass of water leading up to my time at the gym, maybe I would have lasted a few more minutes. If I would have stretched like one muscle group before I got in, things might have gone a little bit better, but I didn't. And so foundations are incredibly important. So you found yourself at church today, and you may be wondering, maybe you're not, but like, what are the foundational things that church is all about? Like, if you were to think about, like, what's the point of all of this? Like, what are we building on? Like, what is the point? Because if you don't understand the foundation, like, you very well could miss the entire point of this whole thing. So if I'm going to figure out what the foundation is to the church, there's one guy's life who I want to look at and see what did he do that we can take from. That guy's name is Jesus, and he did some very foundational and simple things that the church could really benefit from if we engage with it. So in Luke chapter 6, in verses 17 through 19, you can go there, it's going to be on the screen. It says this: "He went down with them," he meaning Jesus, "and he stood on a level place. A large crowd of his disciples was there, and a great number of people from all over Judea and Jerusalem and from the coastal region around Tyre and Sidon, who had come to hear him and be healed of their diseases. Those troubled by impure spirits, they were cured, and the people all tried to touch him because power was coming from him and healing them all." Now, it's very easy to just read that and just keep going and just be like, okay, that was a random few verses. But like, there's a couple things that I believe we can take from this that are just foundational stuff. First of all, a couple weeks ago, Pastor Chris preached a phenomenal message about solitude and getting alone time with God. So Jesus is coming from this place of solitude, and it says that when he's coming down, he gets around his 12 disciples, his 12 best friends. It says he and them, they came down. Them are his 12 disciples. Now, here's what you need to know, is that any teacher during Bible times, any rabbi, they all picked their disciples. That's what they did. They'd all pick their followers who were going to extend what they were doing after they retire, okay? So every rabbi has followers during Bible times. Now, what's interesting is that, like, what normal rabbis would do is they would go to the synagogue and they would just pick the cream of the crop. They would find the best and the brightest people who they want on their side. So one of the things you had to do as a Pharisee or a religious person of the day is you had to memorize the first 5 books of the Bible, and you had to have like 600 plus rules memorized and follow them to the T. So if you're a rabbi, you're going to go to the synagogue and you're just going to pick the smartest people in the room. And that's like you'd be like, yeah, that actually kind of makes sense. Like if I'm going to build a church, I want all the church people to help me build it. Like that would kind of make sense. But when Jesus picks his crew, his guys that he's going to go around with, things were a little bit different with the guys he chose. First of all, most of them were fishermen. Now, fishermen are not those guys that are sitting in the front row at the church service and memorizing the first 5 books of the Bible. These are like your blue-collar, I've got dirt under my fingernails all the time type of guys. They don't have time for a social life. Like, they're on the boat and they're getting fish. That's what they do. They're more of the burly type. And these are the majority of the guys that Jesus decides he wants in his inner circle. Then it gets even more interesting because there's a guy named Matthew. Now, Matthew's a tax collector. Now, if you know anything about this time period, nobody really likes tax collectors. Okay, because what tax collectors would do is the Roman government would impose a tax. Now, the general public had no idea what the tax rate was. So the tax collectors, they would just make up a tax rate. And they would take they would give the Roman government what the Roman government wanted, and their salary was what they stole from people. So like people knew that they were getting stolen from, so people hated tax collectors. They were cheaters, they were robbers, and Jesus finds Matthew and decides he wants that guy on his team. It makes no sense. Then you've got this guy named Simon. Now, Simon's interesting because Simon's really the only religious person that Jesus chose to be on his team. But Simon's a zealot, so he's not really the religious person that we're comfortable with. Okay, the zealots, what they would do, if you were a foreigner or if you didn't believe the very things they believed, they were prone to kill you. Like, that's what zealots did. Now, I'm assuming that Jesus and Simon were kind of walking this journey together, and he wasn't out killing people still, but I bet he may be a little bit temperamental. I mean, he might have some anger management issues that they're trying to walk through together, but Simon the Zealot is a guy that Jesus decided he wanted on his team. So these are the 12 guys, are fishermen, they're just marketplace type people. So if you saw them walking into your town, and you would think you're watching the Bad News Bears, because you're like, what in the world are they going to do? And this is the group of guys that come down from that mountain on this particular day. And then when they get down there, people heard that Jesus was there. So hundreds and thousands of people from all over the area, they flocked to this site to see Jesus. Now, most of these people were sick. They had diseases that were incurable. They had a lot of baggage they were carrying. Like, they were a group of really just messed up people at that point. Now, this is interesting, too, because this was during a time period where the church was trying to separate itself from society. The church was actually trying to make it very difficult for people to engage in what they were doing. In order to come into the church at this point, you had to have the right, you had to say the right things, you had to do the right things, you had to behave a certain way. There was hundreds of rules that you had to follow. If you didn't do that, that was just the bare minimum. You weren't getting into the doors. So this is church during the time that Jesus comes onto the scene. And he comes on the scene, and the very people that are getting rejected by the church are coming to hear the best communicator that's ever walked the face of the planet. And so when the church was consistently and constantly making it impossible for people to find God, God himself shows up and he finds people. Not only does he find people, but he actually gives people what they need. He meets people right where they are at, and he gives them exactly what they need. Like, this is what Jesus did to build his church. It was very simple. I'm going to be the main attraction, and I'm going to give you what you need, and I'm going to meet you right where you are at. And he did it time and time again. In fact, the very next chapter, there's a funeral processional coming out of this city called Nain. Now, I worked for a funeral home, so I know how this stuff works. You line up the cars, people put their blinkers on, and you put the purple flags on the cars, and people just go. Now, as passersby, like, you may see it, and you're like, oh man, that's really sad. You sent out your condolences in the car, but you don't, like, no one in the room would park their car in front of the lead car and try to talk and say a few words to the family. Like, that would be very odd. No one does that. But in this particular story, there's a funeral processional coming out of this city. And the pallbearers are carrying the casket. It's a bunch of young guys. And then Jesus sees the mother trailing behind, and the mother is weeping. And the Bible says that the tears of the mother moved Jesus. So Jesus is going to meet this woman right where she's at. So he walks up to her, and most people just pass by and say, oh man, I'm sorry about your loss. Jesus steps right in and says, sweetheart, I've got this. Goes over, prays for the son who had died, and he wakes up. He meets them right where they are at and gives them exactly what they need. There's another guy named Zacchaeus. Now, Zacchaeus is another tax collector. And remember, nobody likes tax collectors. They're not friends, okay? And they don't even have friends. So he hears, like, he's a prominent, wealthy individual. He hears that Jesus is going to be coming to town. And he's thinking to himself, if I can just, like, get some FaceTime with Jesus, it'll look really good when I'm hanging out with people. I can say I met Jesus. So he finds the street that Jesus is going to be going down, and Zach's a pretty short guy, so when he gets there, it's like 5 deep. You know, he can't get through the crowd. There's way too many people. Besides, it's very unsafe for Zacchaeus to be in large groups because people don't really like him because he's a tax collector. So he looks over and he sees a tree in the distance, and he thinks to himself, I'm just going to climb the tree, and I'm going to see if I can't just make eye contact. Maybe I'll just make eye contact and we'll wave. Because, like, if it's you and I, when we see a stranger, we look, and you kind of get that awkward eye contact, like you're walking through at, like, the store, and it's like, oh, hey, how you doing? And you just keep going, like, oh, that was awkward. Glad I survived. Okay, so he's thinking maybe we'll have one of those moments. So Jesus is walking down the street, and it happens. They make eye contact. And now he's thinking, this is my moment. And so he, like, waves, and, like, Jesus probably looks at him and smiles, and then things get crazy. Because most people would just keep walking. Jesus turns and goes over towards Zacchaeus. This is Zacchaeus who has a lot of trouble making friends. Zacchaeus who doesn't really fit in very well. Jesus gets to the foot of the tree, meets Zacchaeus right where he's at, and gives him exactly what he needs. He says, Zach, come down from the tree. I'm going to go have dinner at your place. This is what Jesus did all the time. There's a guy named Jairus whose daughter, she was on her last breaths. They had physicians come in, nothing. They've had doctors come in, nothing. So in a last-ditch effort, Jairus says, I'm just going to go find Jesus. Like, maybe he'll just say a prayer with me, and maybe something will happen. At least we'll be comforted by Jesus. So he treks across town. He finds the house that Jesus is staying at. They let him in. They even let him into the very room that Jesus is in. At this point, Jairus has to be, like, through the roof with excitement. And now if it's you or I, we get in these situations, and someone says, hey, can you pray for me and my family? We say, yeah, I'll pray. I mean, if we're really bold, we'll pray right then. If someone says, will you pray for me? Usually it's like, yeah, I'll do that later. I'll pray for you. But, like, if we're really bold, we're like, let's do it right now. So Jairus is probably thinking Jesus is like, we're just going to pray right now. He's a right now type of guy. So Jairus gets in the room and says, will you pray with me? And I picture Jairus putting his hands out, like Jesus is going to hold his hands and pray. And Jesus looks at him and says, Jairus, take me to your daughter. Jesus is the type of guy who meets people right where they're at and gives them exactly what they need. Goes back to Jairus' house, prays for the daughter. She wakes up, completely changes their lives. Amen. Now, what's interesting is that Jesus he's not just the type of guy who's going to talk about good ideas. He's not just the type of guy who talks about great concepts and is a great storyteller. Like, he was literally modeling the very life that he wants each and every one of us to be living. He was modeling the very life that he wants each and every church community to live. A life that says, I will meet people right where they are at, and I will give them exactly what they need. And in the process, Jesus is going to be the main attraction. I just believe that the church is the most attractive when Jesus is the focus. When Jesus is the main attraction, the church is its most attractive. And so you can probably think about your life. If you've been to church for a while, you can probably think about that moment where Jesus met you right where you were at. You can probably remember it. You probably remember your life before Jesus met you. You can probably picture it right now. You did not have it all together. You were climbing that corporate ladder, but still felt super empty inside. Your family was just broken. There just seemed to be no hope in the midst of the chaos that was around you. And then you can pinpoint that one moment when you met Jesus and everything changed. You can probably picture it right now. The problem that we have is that for some reason we don't want to, we don't mean to, but for some reason we so easily forget that Jesus met us too, right where we were at. We so easily let it slip our minds that at once we were broken too. Yeah. At once we were empty too. At once we didn't have it all together. And the moment that I choose to forget how much I need Jesus, I'm allowing my church to become a cul-de-sac rather than a bridge. Let me explain. So when we got married, Esther and I, we moved to Syracuse together. And out here they have Homerama, but in Syracuse they have Parade of Homes. I don't know which name is better. They're both a little weird to me. But so at Parade of Homes, this is what happens. There's a new housing development going up, and they're beautiful homes. And what they'll do is they'll open the homes before they're like 100% completed and before the families moves in. So you can walk through, see the vendors who did the countertops. You can see the appliances. You can get some home layout ideas. And so we would always go. We loved it. It was just so much fun. You walk in like you own the place. It's great. You put the little white booties on so you don't get dirt everywhere. It's awesome. And you're going through these homes that are just spectacular. I mean, it is unbelievable how these homes are. You walk into closets that are the size of most people's rooms. You're like, I don't know what I would do with this, but I will take it and I will try to fill it. Like, you are just like, it's like incredible. You're like, what do I do with all this closet space? And then you walk into bathrooms. Now, these bathrooms, every single one of them had that walk-in shower. You know, the one that you dream about that has like 18 shower heads. And you're like, this is perfect. I'll take it. Let's just move in. Thank you for doing this for me. The mirrors in the bathrooms, they have literally, I'm not even making this up, they have TVs inside the mirrors. I have no idea why. I still can't figure it out. But you're brushing your teeth and you're watching SportsCenter. I do not know if life can get any better. And then you go into the basement. And the basement is just the man cave to end all man caves. It's not one TV, it's four. Like 4 panels. Because you don't want to miss anything, ever. And so there's 4 panels. There's whole kitchens in these basements. There's pool tables. There's ping pong tables. There's bathrooms. You never have to leave the basement in these homes. It's unbelievable what these homes have. They have the kitchens that are just like, oh my gosh, all cast iron stoves, just the industrial stuff, always industrial in these homes. It's unbelievable. Every single one of these neighborhoods is built on a cul-de-sac. Because who doesn't want to live on a cul-de-sac? They're like the best communities in the neighborhood. Because you know exactly what you're getting when you go to a cul-de-sac community. It's going to be, if there's one entrance, it's awesome, and it's always safe, very safe. In fact, all the neighbors generally know each other. And so like one of the neighbors goes on vacation, they give their house key to one of the other neighbors. It's the best case scenario. I mean, your kids, they're constantly safe. They can play in the street with almost no care in the world because people don't generally drive down cul-de-sac streets. Now, you may be one of the people that does drive down. We've done it. And there's always that awkward moment when you see the homeowner when you're driving down the cul-de-sac and, like, there's no reason for you to be down there. So you kind of give the awkward wave like, oh, yeah, hey, made a wrong turn. Sorry, I thought there was an outlet. And, but under normal circumstances, like, no one's driving down a cul-de-sac street. Like, in fact, if you got a basketball hoop in your driveway, if you lived on a cul-de-sac, you don't put it in your driveway. You put it right on the edge of the lawn, and your kid gets the whole circle to play basketball in. It's like the best case scenario. Like, everybody wants to live on a cul-de-sac. They make great neighborhoods, but cul-de-sacs make terrible churches. Okay? A cul-de-sac church is always inward focused. So you know you've begun cul-de-sac living when you walk in, and you've been here for so long, and you're still saying, well, this is all about me. How can I benefit from this today? See, a cul-de-sac living church is very inward focused. It's like when you walk in and it's the same thing every time. You just want to hang out with your people. I just want to be with my community today. I need my people. It's not inviting at all to visitors. And what's so scary is how easy we can slip in the cul-de-sac living. And I'll show you, because when the early church first started in Acts chapter 2, it took from Acts chapter 2 to Acts chapter 9 before they became a cul-de-sac church. It's only 7 chapters. It takes like 15 minutes to read, okay? That's how quickly they became a cul-de-sac church. Now, what you need to know about this Acts church is that the early church, to sign yourself up for this thing we call Christianity, was basically signing your death certificate. Because, like, to say I'm a Christian during this time period will get you killed. Like, odds are someone is going to try to find you and kill you. In fact, in Acts chapter 7, there's this guy named Stephen. And Stephen's out preaching, like, on the street, and these guys come with rocks. And they literally start chucking rocks at Stephen for preaching about Jesus. And they kill him. Like, that's what it was like to be a Christian during this early church period. And so the one condoning and basically leading all of this violence against the Christian church was this guy named Saul. Now, Saul, he was a bad dude. He was going town to town, village to village, literally dragging people out of their homes for being Christians and killing them. This is not a happy time period to live, and Paul is not a happy person. Okay? And then at some point, he's on his road from one town to the next to keep killing Christians, and God comes down and literally meets Saul right where he's at, knocks him off of his donkey, and completely changes his life. Saul meets Jesus in that moment. He does a few other things, meets a few other people, and then he decides, I've got to go to church. Now, you've got to picture Saul at this point. He's leaving a lifestyle killing Christians. So he's got all of his friends who, that's what they do. They go and they kill Christians. He's leaving that group and trying to join the very group of the people he's spent years killing. So he shows up to church one morning. Now, you have to try to picture this. You're sitting in church. You've lost loved ones. You've lost friends. You've lost brothers. You've lost parents. You've lost neighbors. And in walks the very guy who was the ringleader of all of it, trying to say that he believes the same thing you believe now. Like, odds are you're probably not going to be too comfortable with that whole thing. And so for 3 years, Paul is trying to fit in to church. He's trying, day in and day out. He's showing up, trying to make it, trying to find some friends, trying to convince people that he believes this thing. And for 3 years, people were conspiring to kill him. People were trying to find a way, how can we get this guy alone so we can kill him? They'd wait by the city gate before he left to try to jump him when he left. So he was able to make a couple friends who would lower him out of the side of a house so they didn't have to go through the gates to get jumped and killed. This was Paul's life. The church had evidently become a cul-de-sac living church. And so here's what happened. In Acts 9:27, there's one guy who stood up. His name's Barnabas. We'll read it. It says, but Barnabas took him, Paul, and he brought him to the apostles. He told them, well, his name is Saul. They changed it to Paul. He told them how Saul on his journey had seen the Lord and that the Lord had spoken to him, and how in Damascus he had preached fearlessly in the name of Jesus. So this one guy, after however many months he listened to Paul talk, finally stood up and said, maybe there's something to this guy. Maybe God actually did get a hold of this guy. He's been here for 3 years. He has done no harm to anybody. He keeps saying the same stuff every time he comes in. Maybe we should give this guy a shot. In that moment, Barnabas became a bridge. Barnabas became a friend to a guy who desperately needed a friend. He met Paul right where he was at and gave him exactly what he needed. And this guy named Paul, we talk about him all the time because he wrote 2/3 of the New Testament. In fact, the church today would not be where it's at if it wasn't for Paul. Like if Barnabas didn't step up and say, I'll take this one, guys. I'm going to walk with this guy and make sure that he gets all that God has for him. If Barnabas did not do that, we would not have the church as we know it today. And so how easy it is for us to slip into cul-de-sac living church, and God has called us to be bridge living people. Because if you've ever gone over a bridge, which almost all of us probably have, you'll notice very simple things about a bridge. They create very easy access. I mean, very easy. Like if you're going to New York City, you don't want to swim across the Hudson River. Like the bridge it makes it very simple to get from one side to the other. It's easy. There's not much to it. You just drive. It's wide open. No one likes one-lane bridges. Bridges are wide open. They accept hundreds and thousands of people. It's just easy. They take you from where you are to where you want to be. Bridges are awesome. They're very welcoming. A bridge living church says, I will do whatever I have to do to take you from where you are now to where God wants you to be. A bridge living church says, I don't care where you've been. I don't care what you've done. I don't care what lifestyle you've come from. I will accept you wholeheartedly 100% of the time. I'm going to show you the unconditional love of Jesus because that is what bridge living churches do. So we are called to be bridge living people. And so the moment that our focus turns inward, the moment we decide that this is just all about me now, the moment I say that, I'm forfeiting my opportunity to reach as many people as possible. I'm forfeiting my opportunity to have a massive impact on the community around me. The moment, because here's the deal. Here's what's so interesting about this, is that if you look around, Jesus had his 12. He picked his 12 people. They were just normal marketplace individuals. That's the picture of what the church was supposed to be. So look around. This is it. Just normal, ordinary people. It might be a strange mixture of people. We come from all different walks of life, but this is who God has chosen to be a bridge to the community around us. This is it. And so here's the deal. In Romans 8:19, and Dennis is going to come out, and I'll tell one more story, but Romans 8:19, it says, for the creation waits in eager expectation for the children of God to be revealed. For the creation waits in eager expectation for the children of God to be revealed. Now, about 3.5 years ago, Esther and I, we got married. It was awesome. Now, any married people in the room? Married, single, don't worry, singleness is fun. But any married people? Yeah, there's a few. Okay, there's 10 of us. Awesome. And so here's the deal. Your wedding day is there's nothing quite like it, right? Especially for a guy, there's absolutely nothing to do. You don't have to do anything. You put your tuxedo on in 10 minutes. Your hair, if you don't shave it all off, your hair is done in 2. Then you're pretty much set for the rest of the day. Okay? For girls, it's much different. The bride has to she's got to get her makeup done. That takes hours. But guys, we've got nothing except to wait there and just it's kind of it gets nerve-wracking after a while. But if you remember that day, it's there's something about it. You get, as time goes on, you get more and more nervous, and it's oh my gosh, I cannot believe this is actually happening. And the excitement just builds. Everything about that day is just building anticipation that's gripping you, right? And so we got married in downtown Rochester at a beautiful old church. You know what I mean? You didn't have to touch the sanctuary. It was that old wood, pipe organ. Beautiful. And it was big. It was awesome. It was perfect, really. I mean, it was perfect. And so my guys and I, we show up at church early. We got our stuff on. We're in a back room, and we're just waiting. The anticipation is mounting. And then you get ready, and then you look out the crack in the door, and all your friends and family are coming in, and it's just it's incredible. And everybody's there for the same reason. Let's not get it twisted. The only reason people show up for a ceremony is because they want to see the bride come in the room. Right, that's it. You want to see how good her dress looks, how's the makeup, how's the hair, and that's the only reason that we're there, is because the bride is about to show up. And so I'm in the back room, and the anticipation is just it's you can cut it with a knife. It's so thick. And then the music starts. Our moms get ushered down the aisle, and they light the unity candle. I have no idea why we do that, but we do. I mean, it's one of those great traditions, unity candles. And they do that. That's my cue to go out. So they sit down, and me and my boys, some of my best friends, we walk out there. And there is not a better moment in your life as a guy, because you're the best-looking guy in the room. Everybody's looking at you. It's awesome. It just can't get any better. And you're just standing there, and everybody's waiting for the moment the bride comes in. And so the music changes a little bit, and the bridesmaids come down. This is one of those other weird traditions with weddings, okay? Because, at the end of the day, if you're a bridesmaid coming up, don't take this too offensively, but nobody really cares about the bridesmaids, right? No, and then they walk so slow. It's just speed. This isn't about you. Just speed up. And so, you just want them to run, because it's everybody in the room is just waiting for it's oh my gosh, you were walking so slow. And so, but and then we picked really good music, okay? Because you want people to cry at your wedding. So you got to pick really great music, because music moves people. So once you pick the good music, people will cry, instant tears. It's perfect. And so we picked the best music. I mean, it crescendoed. And so the idea was that on a crescendo, the doors would swing open and Esther would be there. Right? It was, to a T. It was perfect. Okay? And so this is what happens any wedding. The music changes. Everybody knows the bride's about to come out. So everybody in the room, they all stand. They all stand, because this is the moment everybody has been waiting for. Everybody stands. The music hits. It crescendos. The doors swing open. There's Esther looking more beautiful than ever. Her dad's there. This is amazing. Everybody in the room my mom is weeping. I'm crying. It was one of those moments where if you weren't crying, you had no soul. Okay? This was the perfect moment. Now imagine how awkward this all would have been if those doors swung open on that crescendo and Esther didn't show up. Yeah. Imagine what that would have been like. That would have deflated the room in a second. Everybody's standing there, the doors swing open, and the bride doesn't show up. People would have been like, man, I really thought that this was supposed to go differently. The music was there, the anticipation in the room was set. Everything was perfect for that moment. Imagine what I would have done. I guess we'll try again tomorrow. Where do we go from here? That would have been so awkward. Do you realize that creation waits in eager expectation for the children of God to be revealed? Do you realize that those neighbors that you drive past every morning, and you can kind of see the residue of argument on them, but you act like nothing's going on, you act like everything's okay? Their souls, whether they even know it or not, are waiting in eager expectation for you to meet them right where they are at and give them exactly what they need. Those coworkers, you work with some of the wealthiest people in Rochester. They're climbing that corporate ladder, but they still have that emptiness inside. Their souls are waiting in eager expectation for you to walk in and make a big deal about Jesus. Rochester's waiting for it. They're waiting for a group of people who would say, you know what? I'm just going to go and I'm going to meet people right where they are at, and I'm going to give them exactly what they need. I'm going to make Jesus the most famous thing about me. So when we do things as a church like Fa La La, it's not just so we can print more paper. It's not just so we can set up a great village in the yard. We desperately want to see Rochester meet Jesus. We want to create as many open doors as we can for thousands to come and experience the hope that can only be found in Jesus. So when you go out and you take those 6 invite cards, and you don't just throw them in your purse and be like, yeah, I'll get to that later. I want you to really think, who can I bring? Who can I meet right where they are at? Because we've all got those people. We can meet them right where they are at, give them exactly what they need. Imagine what would happen if a group of people in Little Chi-Lai, New York said, you know what? I'm just going to make a big deal about Jesus. I'm going to meet people right where they are at and give them exactly what they need. I'm going to make a big deal about Jesus. Imagine what would happen. So I hope that it is said of the Father's house that we are a bridge living people, that we accept people unconditionally. We always think the best. We create big front doors to invite as many people and love as many people as possible, because I believe that is the church that Jesus wanted us to be. A church that just loves people and meets them right where they are at. Can we pray together? Now, for some of you in here, this might be the first time you've ever been to church. And you might be in that spot where it just feels absolutely hopeless. You may be in that spot where it just seems like, man, if you were to ask me how my life is doing, it's literally everything is going well. I've got the job, I've got the family, but for some reason there's that emptiness inside your heart. I firmly believe that Jesus wants to come and give you hope. I believe that Jesus wants to come and fill that emptiness that you have in your heart. I believe that there's a God who wants to meet you right where you are at, and right now could be that moment. I believe he wants to do it, and I believe that he will. So I just want to pray for us this afternoon, that God would meet us right where we are at. God, we thank you that you are a God that you just desire to accept us. You desire to love us. And so God, right now, I just pray that you would meet each and every individual right where they are at. In the areas of life where everything just seems hopeless, God, I pray you would meet them right where they are at. In the areas of life that seem empty, they seem confusing, they seem chaotic, God, I pray that you would bring peace. You would bring joy. You would bring fulfillment. You would be the Savior that humanity desperately needs. And God, I pray that the Father's house would be a bridge living church. That when we view people, we don't view them with judgment, but God, we view them with acceptance the way that your son Jesus would accept them. And I thank you for the stories that we're going to be able to tell together of the great things you've done in Rochester through this community. We thank you for it in Jesus' name. Amen.